And we're live, streaming from the footsteps of New York City. Thank you for joining us for Music Matters with Jason Tramm. I'm delighted you can join us for our unique podcast community where we explore the issues and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube and hit that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. Like and share our videos on social media, as we are a growing platform and we're so exciting. We get to bring together professional artists and people who love that art into one community where we can discuss these issues. Please remember to join us on the chat feature and join the conversation. We love it when people join and talk with us and interact with our guests. And remember to ask some questions. And thank you so much for being here. We have a wonderful conductor with us today. This is our weekend of conductors. Yesterday was Nir Cabaretti, a famous orchestral conductor and opera conductor. And today we have a rising star choral conductor, Vinroy Brown Jr., who is currently on faculty at Westminster Choir College, teaching in the conducting, organ, and sacred music divisions. He is a church musician, a concert conductor, having founded the Elmwood Concert Singers. He's also a worship leader at Elmwood United Presbyterian Church and is the artistic director and conductor of the Capitol Singers of Trenton, as well as the Westminster Jubilee Singers. We are delighted to welcome Vinroy Brown Jr. Welcome, Vinroy.
Thank you for the invitation. Pleasure to be with you.
So this is a Super Bowl edition, so we're going to be talking sports, so I hope you're ready.
I am ready. I did all the Google searching needed to do this interview successfully.
Good, because I'm not much of a baseball fan, so it's going to be an interesting interview.
Oh, this isn't a track and field event? Okay.
I think between the two of us, I didn't even realize that it was Super Bowl Sunday, so it just tells you where I'm at. Oops. So, Vinroy, tell me about what's new these days. I know it's a lot of changes over at Princeton and at Westminster Choir College. What's happening these days?
Lots of things are happening these days. A lot of them are happening from this room in my home office. And at my home office, I'm able to engage with my students at Westminster. I joined the faculty of Loyola Marymount University this semester, and I'm a lecturer in music, teaching a course in music and social justice that I was able to create for the university.
We definitely have to talk about that.
Yeah, alongside a phenomenal colleague, Dr. TJ Harper. And I guess the biggest change for me this year, in the middle of all this, was assuming the artistic directorship of the Trenton Children's Chorus.
Congratulations. I saw that, and it's a wonderful, your career is just blossoming, and I said we have to have him on the show to talk about what he's doing and the energy he brings, and I've heard such great things from my colleagues about you, so I'm so excited you could join us today in Music Matters.
Well, thank you. I pay my colleagues very handsomely to say great things. In addition to TCC, my continued work at Elmwood United Presbyterian, aka The Wood, and with the Capitol Singers of Trenton. Thankfully, I've been able to remain occupied during this time. I'm just doing it in a 12 by 12 room.
Isn't it amazing how I don't think I've ever been busier than I am this year. With my college teaching, with my choral societies, and some of the other projects I'm doing. I'm used to adding a lot of guest conducting, traveling. I do a lot of opera conducting, but it's been like that's all stopped. But my college, all the other teaching has gotten so much. It's been very challenging to transition to online and to make it feel seamless.
Absolutely, and I'm still working out kinks. I feel like I'm still improvising. And that wasn't the thing I signed up for, but we're here, right? And ultimately, I guess life is one big improvisation if we were supposed to think that, philosophically about these things. But there's definitely a learning curve. And I think regardless of your comfort level with technology, we are all figuring this thing out. How to get on the Zoom, how many times you have to say, you're muted, or turning your camera on, or figuring out virtual backgrounds.
If I could figure out a nickel for each time I say that in my lecture courses or in all my courses, I'd be a very wealthy man.
You'd be wealthy, wealthier than most conductors. Investing in ring lights and, making sure you're dressed not only from the waist up. And it's been interesting for sure.
Why don't we go back in time and tell me how you started in music? Did you always know you wanted to be a conductor?
No. Music had kind of always been in my life. I'm a product of the Black church. And my uncle, the Bishop Glenford, Howard Brown Sr. I grew up in the Pentecostal church. Music had kind of always been a thing, but nothing that I had seriously considered. And then when I was, growing up as a kid, I actually joined the orchestra in third grade and was in the orchestra for one day. I joined the orchestra, and the day I joined the orchestra in third grade, my orchestra teacher went home and died in his sleep. True story.
Oh,
And
no.
in third grade, Vinroy thought that somehow my joining the orchestra killed this poor man. So I left the orchestra and went to choir. I had a phenomenal choir teacher. And then about 12 or 13, when I was about, I think 13, I got put up in front of the choir at my church, and I started directing the choir there. And I fell in love with kind of being in front of a choir. And I also had a very influential middle school teacher, Marjorie Matola, who really helped birth a love of classical music. And then I went to high school, and my high school choir teacher, Peggy Sika, changed my life. She put me in front of a choir where I was conducting classical works. My first conducting teacher was my orchestra teacher. The orchestra teacher at the school, Jeff Bradbury, and my high school choir teacher went to a little school called Westminster Choir College, and she encouraged me to apply. But interestingly enough, music was my third choice. I was going to study neuroscience. I wanted to be a brain surgeon, and got deterred by the schooling. And then wanted to be an English teacher and got deterred by reading. I love to write, and music was my third choice. And I'm grateful that I kind of followed the nudging and accepted the call. And that's been my life. Westminster changed my life as a student and now as a faculty member. And in every area of my professional life, somehow Westminster has played a role.
And having gone to Westminster, now you're teaching there. What's it like making that transition? What was it like when you first made that transition?
Yeah, I will say, I've been on the faculty now for almost 5 years, but I will say it took me 2 years to call anyone by their first name. And it's so funny because they see you, I went to Westminster at 17 years old, you're a little skinny, brawny Vinroy, and, you're this ambitious kid, but you're still a kid, And I joined the faculty at Westminster 2 years after graduating, still feeling like a kid. And I'll never forget Margaret Cusack. She at that time was the chair of the voice and piano department. She's now chair of voice, piano, conducting, organ, and sacred music, right? But I remember I wouldn't call her Margaret. She would get upset. And the first time I called her Margaret, we were in the bookstore, and it was like thunderous round of applause. Like, you get it now. Like, you're okay. You're supposed to be here. But I will say my colleagues have been far more laid back and chill about it than I have. I've been the one kind of scared to become the colleague. And they're all like, yeah, get over it, Vinroy. You're here now.
What was your first choir choir as a music director?
All right. So I graduated Westminster with degrees in sacred music and music education. And I through a great colleague, Dr. Brennan Waddles, was introduced to Elmwood. He was lined up to guest conduct for a Martin Luther King service, and he couldn't do it. So I literally just came in to fill in for him 5 years ago. And I haven't left since.
Once you find a great home, it's hard, it's that wonderful fit in our careers, right? Isn't that great to find that fit?
Absolutely. And I wasn't actively looking for a church job. And it found me. And I guess that was really the first choir. There I formed the Elmwood Concert Singers quite early on in my tenure, kind of accidentally. My first concert with them was about 6 months in, and we did a double bill of the Foray Requiem and the Robert Ray Gospel Mass. And there had been a community choir that kind of dissolved in the area, and they had done the Foray as one of their last works. So I kind of recruited some of them, and then I was like, all right, well, this kind of worked. So let's just see what happens if this stays a thing. And it's been a thing.
Boy,
So
that Robert Ray Gospel Mass, how prophetic now. He never failed me yet. God, I love that piece.
it is a incredible work, and juxtaposed to the foray, actually made a really nice concert for our community. That Elmwood is a church that is predominantly African American, but loves high church, loves classical music, but also wants to see themselves in the music that we perform. So it was a great kind of juxtaposition for a program, and I would totally do it again.
Yeah, I love when these styles intersect and we can see the universal human story behind both. I love that.
Yeah. So that was my first, I guess, real official post as a music director. And then shortly thereafter, I became the artistic director of Capitol Singers of Trenton. And I actually started Capitol Singers of Trenton, and I started at Westminster in the same semester, fall 2017.
So now you made that transition from the student to the professional conductor, and you've got choirs all over the place every night. And now, when did you start your job with your position with the Jubilee Singers?
So Jubilee Singers came as a result of a conversation that I had with, at the time, the chair, Dr. Amanda Quist, who had been my mentor at Westminster. They were looking for a conductor, and I happened to see her at a commencement. We had a very brief conversation, then a formal conversation later on. And I had been applying to jobs. I had just left my first public school teaching job and was looking for other jobs. And I stumbled upon Capitol Singers, and then Jubilee Singers kind of happened organically. And I'll never forget getting a call in the summer of 2017, like, hey, do you want to do this? And being like, yes, I totally want to do this. And literally in the same week, finding out that that I was going to be offered the artistic director position of Capitol Singers. Because at that point, I had gone through a 6-month process of interviews and auditions and the whole rugamaroo.
We all go through the long processes.
Yeah, definitely worth it, and definitely a decision that I'm so grateful they made. I've really found a home there with them and with Jubilee. With Jubilee particularly because I sang in that ensemble as a student. So
did you sing under Donald Dumpson?
I did not. So Dr. Dumpson left the year I graduated high school to go finish his PhD. So I remember going to one of his last concerts as a pre-college, someone looking for colleges, and being mesmerized by Westminster, and it really was a selling point for me. And then not having much contact with him until I was a student, and the past conductors were invited to come back for the 20th anniversary of the Jubilee Singers, which we all know Dr. Dumpson founded. And it wasn't until I was a senior that I really got to know him and form a relationship with him. And he's been a very dear mentor and friend, and definitely pushing me and rooting for me very publicly, very loudly, in such a fatherly way. It's amazing.
There's so many great colleagues in this music business, and I'm privileged to have worked with Donald on several occasions. And I had him conduct 2 years ago at Ocean Grove, and it was a blast to have him down there to work with our congregation. And it's great to see that the choirs and the Jubilee Singers are in wonderful hands.
I don't take it lightly. I've worked with every conductor before me, so I definitely feel a charge to continue such a great legacy, and it's important to have an ensemble like Jubilee anywhere, but to have an ensemble like Jubilee at Westminster Choir College, it is really rare. It's an academic course that students take for credit and get a grade. It's not an after school or an afterthought. It's embedded in the sacred music curriculum. And I definitely feel like he's right here, just encouraging me. And Brandon Wilds is right here. And, all of the great leaders of this ensemble before me are, I feel like they're all cheering me on. And I know I can go to them for counsel. And I value their friendship and their professional relationships.
It's wonderful. It's great to have those connections to the past, and as you drive forward to the future, has the ensemble taken on greater significance in today's climate with all of the events in society? Have you felt any of that?
Yeah, well, I definitely think all of the ensembles I have the privilege of leading have been a part of a greater conversation, which I'm grateful for. Jubilee for sure. I think it says a lot about a school like Westminster in the age that we are in of social activism and awareness, that they make a conscious effort to elevate the work of the Jubilee Singers, which I thank my administration at Westminster for doing. But even with Capitol Singers and with the Trent Children's Chorus, serving in communities that are impacted by this level of social activism. There were riots and protests down the street from where we rehearse, the Capitol Singers, and we're seeing racial injustice take place and impact people who look like the children that I work with in Trenton. And you can't separate the musical duty that we have and the social duty that we have to our organizations during this time. But for me, it's been an even greater call to action.
What is music's role in healing some of those divides that we all face in this nation?
Well, music, fundamentally, I think the act of making music is healing, right? Especially the act of community music making. There is something scientifically proven, to say that when we sing together, when we play together, when we enjoy music together, that our body reacts positively to that music, right? And I think the time that we are in calls us to make music, of course, but it calls us to make music that is responsive and that is aware and cognizant of what's happening in our world. And I think, as conductors, we have a responsibility to make sure that the music that we're making represents the people that we make it with and the people that hear it, and that it is mindful of the time that we are in. You can't ignore it. And I find that the majority of our colleagues have definitely stepped up to the plate and have done the work.
I think we're all in the choral world always kind of refining our repertoire choices, and I think it's so important. I agree with you. I look certainly in all of my repertoire to really expand the reach and to hit new audiences and to present new composers. Who are some of the composers that we should be aware of today, of people who are watching this show, some of the composers you want to bring up and people whose work you really recommend?
There are so many. One of my favorite composers is B.E. Boykin, soon to be Dr. B.E. Boykin. She is currently on the faculty at Spelman College. She and I were classmates at Westminster. She was in the graduate sacred music program. I was in the undergraduate sacred music program. And her body of work is just phenomenal. I think of composers like Dr. Marcus L.A. Garrett, Dr. Christopher Harris, Dr. Brandon Boyd, Dr. Persephone Powell. She's been in the game forever, but I'm just constantly amazed by her output. I've been fortunate enough to kind of immerse myself in this research of predominantly Black, composers, but living composers, because I also think it's important to give people their roses while they're still here, So that's like my top 5, top 6.
That's great to hear some of those names, and people should be researching. And it's so important. I love to find the work of living composers because I can ask them why they did a certain phrase a certain way. I love that interaction with composers, and it's very hard to do that with Beethoven these days.
Right. You don't have to guess what Bach meant. Or you have to guess what Bach meant. You don't have to guess what B.E. Boykin meant. You don't have to guess what, Marcus meant. And I love that interaction, and I love the openness of today's composers to sometimes different interpretations of their music. Because when you as a conductor see a score, you have the tools there, right? But it is your job to interpret what's in front of you. And sometimes composers are willing to let your interpretation really come to life. Sometimes they're more hesitant and they want, what's on the page to be what's on the page. And I love having that dialogue, even if we end up keeping what's just on the page. I love finding out why, to your point, the why you did this, or the why I can't do this one thing, or I really feel this kind of rubato in this measure. Can you let me have a little freedom here? Or, this is the part I really like. How can I dig into it more? That dialogue with today's composers, you can't beat. It makes
that's been a favorite part of my career. Has been some of the pieces I've commissioned, and I've had this conversation with Gwyneth Walker quite a bit. We've commissioned two half-an-hour multi-movement pieces and several short works, and every time it's never finished until we premiere it, and then she publishes them. It's like that conversation back and forth. I think the first couple times it's performed, you see the life that's in these pieces, and then they kind of lock in. But it's exciting to be part of that process.
Absolutely, and I'm in a process similar to that now. At Trent Children's Chorus, we've begun a composer in residence program, and Professor Damien Sneed, whose music people should also be very aware of. Damien is our first ever composer in residence, and we have 5 choirs at TCC, and the charge was to come up with 4 lines about the idea of overcoming. And we spent all fall creating these lines. And Damien is going to set this to music. And he was able to hear from our choristers directly about how they thought this music should sound. He got to come in, and the kids got to read the poetry to him, and he was able to give his initial reactions to the text and say, I kind of hear this here, or I feel like this could happen here, or this is the theme that's going to happen in this section. And for our choristers, having that interaction at such a young age is priceless, because you and I as adults, fangirl and love these moments now. But these choristers will have these moments, and they may not even realize in that moment how impactful it is. And 30 years from now, something may click, and they may be like, wow, we did this. Like,
you're the first to call me an adult. That's impressive.
I'm trying to adult every day. We're figuring it out, right?
Musicians never grow up. Come on, that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, there has to be a sense of wonder.
We have a comment from the audience. Gail Rubenstein writes that, and with living composers, you can invite them into your classroom to discuss the process. That is such a vital part of that learning experience, and what a wonderful opportunity for your students.
Absolutely, and Gail is amazing. So Gail, thank you for being on.
Shout out, Gail, and thank you for listening.
But yeah, being a part of the process. And sometimes the process means, in most instances, the process means more than the product.
These days, especially with the online and the virtual nature of things,
the
process is so important.
It has to be, because we can't bank on the product being what we want it to be in this virtual world, and without losing the humanity of what we do. So the process is everything.
So let's jump into the COVID world. And how has COVID, this is a question we all answer in our own way, how has COVID affected your practice?
Ooh.
It's a tough one, I know.
There is a level of added preparation. And although we won't say it out loud, a lot of us have done this before, not often, I'm sure, but enough times where we go to a rehearsal and sometimes we don't have a plan, or sometimes we don't know what's going to happen, but we're able to interact with our singers, and we're able to do what we do as conductors and respond in real time to what's happening. And then we have a rehearsal, right? In Zoom land, there's little room for error. You kind of have to have it together. Because you'll lose your constituents. I've had enough error where people have been like, I can't do this until you get the Zoom thing right, or how do we fix the lag, or I can't hear you, it's distorted, or can you repeat that again, or
you're muted.
You're muted. There's a certain level of preparation that we always had to have coming into the room, right? And I think the virtual room requires more preparation. And quite frankly, it requires more preparation from us than it really does our singers. As a conductor, I feel that in normal world, you do a certain level of preparation so that you can go to your classroom or your rehearsal and you can kind of figure it out together, right? So I feel like you're doing 90 to 95%, and that last 5%, we're exploring and growing together. As I've learned in this kind of Zoom world, you have to have 95 to like 97% of it figured out before you go in the room, because you can't do your typical length rehearsals on Zoom, and you're going to lose people. So you have to,
Screen burn's a real thing. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. I've come to like no more than 45 minutes to an hour on Zoom. That's what I can do, and that's what my constituents can do, and that's what we're doing. So, we have 3-hour rehearsals in person.
Yeah. And they go by in a flash,
Absolutely. And so there's a level of preparation we have to totally have going in that is just, it's a heightened level now.
I find myself teaching. I do a lot more of the actual lecturing and talking about historical backgrounds, setting the style, because the things that we're so used to working on, sound, tone, vowel unification, it becomes such a different experience.
Yeah.
How is your delivery? How have you delivered the content differently?
Well, I am the conductor that talks a lot in rehearsal. I'm not gonna lie. And I get that from my colleagues at Westminster, because they have so much to share, and I would spend rehearsals just mesmerized by what they have to share. And I always want to be like them, right? So I find myself talking a lot. To your point, I'm always having to reiterate and reinforce the why we do things. So I spend a lot of my rehearsal explaining the why, and I offer practice tracks so that they can figure out the how. And the practice tracks and that kind of rehearsal happens a little bit in our corporate time, but it mostly happens outside. Because I think our constituents understand that the music making virtually is just not the same. And, something as simple as, how do we warm a choir up on Zoom? How do I know that they have the right ah vowel? How do I know that they've tuned to my piano? So I spend my time giving them the why and helping them figure out the how, and empower them in the process to kind of discover that how for themselves too.
I think we see a lot of our choral colleagues are on the line. A lot of teachers and choral directors. I see people commenting. It's like a therapy session. We're all like, yes, I love it.
And our colleagues have been amazing, because we are in this together, right? None of us are alone. And I can't tell you how many colleagues I call to figure this thing out. And the consensus is we're all still figuring it out.
This is the 95th show we've done on this podcast, and many of them are teachers and conductors from throughout the country and throughout the world. We had Australian conductors on last week, and it's so amazing how we've all had to go through this journey together. And I learned so much from people like yourself who are out there meeting the needs of their community. I think we've all had to really be philosophical about why we do this and how can we keep it vital to keep our communities together.
Right, we have to trim the fat. and get to the bone, right, to the heart and the soul of the music. And I know that this will impact what happens when we get out of this. And now that I know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and that we will get out of this, I'm starting to think about what that looks like even now.
Me too. I do a lot of orchestral contracting and opera conducting, pops conducting, and starting to get people requesting quotes for those type of things again. And that's like the first step is that type of planning, long-term planning. And it's exciting to see that because there is a glimmer of hope as the vaccine comes out and we get to be safe again. I mean, it's been such a journey for us all, but boy, it's amazing when you go through something like this, which has never happened in the history of American choral music. I mean, it's never happened. I mean, for example, the Metropolitan Opera has never closed a single performance, even in the Spanish flu.
That's a big deal.
So this is a once in a lifetime, once in 2 lifetimes, 3 lifetimes occurrence that we're going through. And I'm just amazed by how people like yourself and all of our colleagues are adapting and finding ways to inspire, even when it's beyond challenging.
Yeah, and we have to, right? If we don't adapt, we lose out. Our ensembles don't get to perform or make music. And for those of us who are musicians and professional musicians, we don't get a paycheck. So we have to be practical too, right? Do I necessarily want to be on Zoom? No, but do I not want to have lights in my house? No. So we're going to figure it out and we're going to make it work. And we're going to do the best to give them an honest experience because they deserve it.
And when creative people are forced with the most challenging situations, they come up with creative solutions, and that's what creative people always do. And we find ways around. We find ways to meet the needs of our individual groups at every level, from the top choirs in the world to the community choirs to the church choirs, to all those populations. We need singing more than ever right now.
Right, we need that community, and I was sharing this with you a little bit offline. I feel like there will be a renaissance of community music making when we get out of this. I think people are craving community, and I hope that my colleagues are working as hard as we are to make sure that when we get out of this, we have a place to receive them and to make that community happen. And I think there's going to be a resurgence of participation in community ensembles. I think people are going to want to sing and play and perform like never before. And I think that we're not going to take this for granted in the ways we sometimes take what we get to do.
Reminds me of the words of Leonard Bernstein when he said, "Our response to violence is to sing more with more depth and to make music with more passion." And I think we're all going to feel that way. Even the most, when we're the most exhausted and we go from rehearsal to rehearsal, there won't be a single rehearsal where we don't appreciate when we go back to making live music again.
Right. It's an attitude of gratitude, right? I won't complain as much when I come home from a 4-hour rehearsal. Or I won't complain as much studying my scores, because we are meeting a need, and sometimes we don't even know the specific needs that we're meeting and how deep they run, but we stand in the gap for so many and for so much, and I know I'm going to do my best to never take it for granted. As will our musicians.
And continue to inspire as we do, or to find ways to inspire and to bring that gift of music to people that need it more than ever, because we've had such division in society. Politics has been so ugly, and music is the chance to heal those wounds and to find ways that we can understand each other. I've been so blessed to work with so many great musicians of every type, and especially when I work internationally. I did the premiere of Porgy and Bess in Albania, which was at the National Opera House of Albania. I got to take a cast of American singers with me and to conduct this opera. The chorus and the orchestra were actually Albanian, and the soloists were African American, and it was the most incredible learning experience because teaching Albanians about American racism, they had no idea why people would, it was just an amazing cross-cultural experience. But by the end, the connection we made, through the music was such a powerful learning tool. And every time I put the baton down, and by the end of the process, no matter where I am in the world, musicians are musicians, and we learn to respect each other.
And the music will always speak. The music is always enough. And I think that's what I've had to realize during this time. The music is always enough.
What are some of the things we're going to take away from we all know the challenges of the Zoom platform and the limitations inherent in that. What are some of the positives that we might take away from this period as we go forward into and rewrite the next chapter?
Well, I can speak for the the ensembles I lead. Um, to me, the world moving forward, the future is hybrid. I'm thinking of, how do I engage the singers that I have from around the country? Capital singers. We have singers from Alaska, from Ohio, from California. Our audiences are now international. With Trenton Children's Chorus, I have children from Texas. I have children from places in the state that, under normal circumstances, would not be able to drive. I have artistic staff working around the country. And how do I keep them engaged? So to me, the future looks hybrid. It looks like, and it might not be fully hybrid. It might be, all right, one project a season is going to be all virtual, or we're going to have one day a month where we do virtual programming, or we're going to find ways to feature our constituents from around the country and around the world. I think it looks hybrid. I think the future also, due to the kind of the social reawakening, looks a lot more inclusive in our repertoire. And I feel like we have these conversations every few years. But I think the difference with this conversation about repertoire is that it's also coupled with a high social movement. And I think we can't ignore the movement. And we won't ignore the movement. I think our classrooms and our rehearsals and our programming looks far more inclusive. I think it also looks multi-generational, because there's now a generation of particularly, older musicians who are now comfortable enough to engage in online programming. And I think we can bridge that gap in our music making, so that our community choirs don't have to all be people of a certain age. I think our world coming out of this looks a lot brighter, which makes me happy to kind of dig in. I also think it looks like us making high art, but also being concerned about the people making the high art in a way that we have not been before. And, we have to serve the music, and the music has to serve us, but we also have to serve each other. And I think we're going to come out of this a lot more thoughtful and mindful of one another.
Very sage advice and very sage words. It's great to hear that. And boy, some exciting thoughts. How about looking at your social justice class? What was that like? And tell us about the genesis of that and how that's affected you and your teaching.
Yeah. So the course that I've been able to develop at Loyola Marymount is the result of several conversations that I had with Dr. T.J. Harper, and just his quest, as with all higher education, this, I know this, both teaching at the college level, to just make sure that we're responding to what's happening in the world. And this class is one that really is speaking to where we are, but also stretching out further than just black and white racial issues. This class that we developed together is for music and non-music majors. So I have music majors, I have accounting majors, I have theater majors, I have undecided majors, and the great part is, Loyola Marymount University is in California. I'm in New Jersey teaching remotely. And for better or for worse, these people have no idea who I am, right? So they don't know me as this diehard choir nerd. So this class had to stretch me, especially because they weren't all music majors. This isn't a choral literature class. We're talking about the Beatles. We're talking about, Black Sabbath. We're talking about Nina Simone. We're talking about Run DMC. We're talking about the Bernstein Mass. We're talking about so many things, and we have to reach not only all of the communities that our students represent, but we also have to reach them where they are musically or where they're not musically. And it's been a great journey so far. We're about week 5 into our semester. We just finished a week of talking about rock and roll. like,
I
who
love it. I love this cross genre approach. One thing is I'm a huge fan of multi genres, and even on this show, I started with what I know best is, college teaching music, conducting, opera, symphony. But I've kind of veered off, and I've added rap, R&B, contemporary music, and rock and roll. We have guests of the next 3 months from all of those genres, and it's been fascinating to me to see how my artistic colleagues in other genres are dealing with the same problems that we're talking about today. Truly, it's the same.
It is the same, and we know how to respond as conductors to the music and interpret the music. And I would never think, that I would be in. I'm currently in the throes of preparing the Brahms Requiem, right? I would have never thought that I'd be preparing the Brahms Requiem and taking hours a day to score study the Brahms, but also in preparation for my class, talking about Black Sabbath. Like it never made sense to me, and it's making my musical appetite grow too, because I have to listen to this music in order to be able to speak about it. And fundamentally, what I also learned in this process is that, and I've kind of always felt this, but I had not been able to articulate it, but you showing up every day as the most authentic version of yourself, in and of itself, is protest against what society expects you to be, right? And my musical expression and my musical platform is my sign of protest, is my political activism, is my call to justice. So I don't have to be out there marching and picketing, and I've done that. I can do it through my study of the Brahms Requiem, right? Thinking about Brahms, who wanted to make sure that the mass wasn't so high and mighty and it came down to the people, so it was in the vernacular. Or I can find that through Nina Simone, or I can find that through I can find that through the Bernstein Mass, or I can find that through Run DMC, or I can find that through Elton John or the Beatles, the Beatles are taking up 2 weeks of my curriculum, So it's been amazing to see music, and this class actually has helped me see classical music in a different way.
We had a great conductor on yesterday, Nir Cabaretti, who's he was the chorus master at the Vienna Staatsoper, but now he's the music director of the Santa Barbara Symphony, and he conducts all the major orchestras in the world. And we're talking about how important it is to bring a variety of repertoire to any programming. So the symphony he's looking at inclusive programs that include film elements and different types of composers, and that span the whole American experience. And I just love to see that the discussion as it opens up more, that people are embracing diversity in most important way.
Absolutely, and it brings us out of the ivory tower that sometimes as conductors we are in. And sometimes it's not our fault. Sometimes it's just the nature of where we are, right? If you are a symphonic conductor, your gut tells you to program certain
Brahms and Beethoven, yeah.
But sometimes we choose to be in those towers because we're scared of what coming down looks like. And I feel like we're in a season where we all have to really put our ear to the ground and be conscious of what's happening and what's out there. So it's been a great ride. I wish we wouldn't have to go through a global pandemic and a racial awakening to figure it all out, but I'm still grateful for the experience.
Yeah, things happen where they're supposed to happen, and if you're a religious person, you believe that you're placed where you are in time for a specific reason, and I do that as well. I think about that when I'm working on all of my planning and putting everything together. How am I going to teach, repertoire across the map and all via Zoom? But these are the times we're given, and we have to bloom where we're planted.
Right, and I see a lot of buds coming up.
Pretty exciting. We have a question from the audience. What genres do you listen to when you're not being a choral nerd, quote unquote?
Good question. So because of church, I listen to a lot of gospel, obviously. I have almost the complete Nina Simone discography.
Mm.
I love jazz. I love 90s R&B. And believe it or not, I'm into contemporary music, soft rock. Um, and, I'm not opposed to country music just because there's great storytelling. That's some of the best, actually, storytelling in all of music. Um, so that's kind of what my iPod looks a little bit like that. There's definitely some piano music. I had a phase where I was into German pop because I had been studying German for about 14 years. Um, and yeah, I like to think of myself as an eclectic music lover.
Well, we certainly live in eclectic times, and I think that's part of the zeitgeist. And I think we're really a lot of people are very interested in they're commenting on here. So thank you so much for sharing that. Um, any what advice do you have for the music students of today, who are coming up in very different times than when I came up or when you came up, and are dealing with very different issues? What do you have to say to them?
Ah, so much. Yet I feel like I'm still one of them, right? But you know, during this time, and anyone who is going to go into music as a profession must realize that this patriarchal Anglo-Saxon, Western European lens through which we see music is now it's a multicolored lens. And our education has to be different. Our pedagogy has to be different. Our music education programs have to look different. Our choral ensembles have to look different. Our view of the world has to evolve. And I think there's much hope with this generation. I think this generation has grown up with kind of social justice and activism kind of in their lives regularly. So I feel like, generations, are we Generation Z now? I'm not Generation Z. I'm not
I
that.
asked
I
my
asked my
son that,
son that,
and he
and
said
he said
yes.
yes. Okay, so I'm not Generation Z. I'm a millennial, right? But those who are coming up have seen quite a lot, and I actually have great hope for them. But I think they need to be true to themselves. I think they need to find out who they are, and I think they need to allow life's journey to shape how they will contribute to the profession and to the world. It's not going to look the way you think it should. And you have to be okay with that. It's going to look different. Even when I was a music education major, we learned about critical pedagogy. Now it's, social emotional learning, culturally responsive teaching, and they all mean the same thing. And they've probably all been around just as long, but it's a new iteration of what we're doing. We have to evolve with what's happening in our world. And I think actually this generation's really positioned well to do it. They say you can't teach old dogs new tricks, but you can teach puppies as many tricks as you want. So I have great hope for them. And I still think you can teach old dogs new tricks. We're not all too old to learn.
Well, conductors love to. I thrive on, like, as a lot of my colleagues do, finding new composers and getting a new score. It's like a kid on Christmas opening the first crack of the page and learning a new score is just as exciting to me now as it was when I was in my teens. So that never goes away.
It never goes away. And singing something for the first time, and or even giving life to a new work, you can never forget that.
The joy of creation is just such an intrinsic part of what we do. And I want to thank you so much for joining us here. How can people find out more about your work? Where can they go, and how can they find you on social media?
Unfortunately, I have too many friends on Facebook, and I don't think I can accept anymore. However, people can follow me on Vinroy D. Brown Jr. Conductor on Facebook, and can find me on www.vinroydbrown.com. And I'm always looking to stay connected with people through my work at Trent Children's Chorus, through Capitol Singers, through Elmwood, through Westminster, and now through Loyola Marymount. Ooh, that's a lot to say. I'm I'm responsive to messages. I want people to email me. I want people to find me. Um, you know, I'm eager to stay connected, and that's how nowadays you can find me. I've found so many people, so many new friends and colleagues during this time, especially because like we were speaking about earlier, both of us have been called to kind of lecture all over the place, and meet new people and talk about new things and engage in conversation. And I love that connection. So find me on Facebook on my professional page. Find me on my website to keep up with where I am, where I'm lecturing, what I'm doing, where I'm conducting. And I look forward to hopefully connecting with everyone who wants to connect in person at some time, once all of this is passed.
Vinroy, thank you so much for sharing your time. Your energy is contagious, and I wish you continued blessings as you meet the needs of all of your communities.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I know that we will work together very soon.
Absolutely.
And I'm grateful for you offering this platform, not just for myself, but for so many. Our profession needs this. And to all of you who are listening, thank you for tuning in and adding your thoughts. I'm going to try to go back and read as many things as I can. And be well. My best to you. I know the semester has ensued, Jason. So my best to you. My best to all of you. We've got this. We don't have a choice, but we really do. We can do this.
There's a lot of hope out there, and it just makes me happy to come together and have this conversation with you, because it just goes to show how much joy there is in the world.
Yeah, there's still joy to be found.
And you can go, and now you can go watch the Super Bowl. So if you're ready,
in theory, I'm rooting for Tampa. Only in theory, just because a very dear friend, almost my god brother, is working the Super Bowl this year.
Wow.
But other than that, I have no idea what's happening. I don't know if I don't think we've missed any musical performances. Maybe, who knows? I'll rewind.
Sort of music on the Super Bowl is always quotes,
Yeah.
pre-recorded and pre-packaged and all that.
But for all of you that are rooting for your team, I hope your team wins, and I hope you're not completely dissatisfied by the music, and that it gives you something good to at least make you smile or laugh a little bit.
And that sports, like music in that way, can also provide unity in its own way. And the whole Tom Brady coming back to a new team, and we'll see how that works out for them.
Tired of seeing Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, but that's another conversation for another day. I know that much about football. So there you have it.
Thank you so much, Vinroy, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Be well, everyone. Be well, Jason.
Thank you for watching Music Matters with Jason Tramm. We're so delighted you can join us. Please remember to subscribe to us on YouTube. It's very important as we grow our community. Join us on Facebook. We have a page, Instagram, all of those things. And remember, we have a busy week this week. This coming Thursday, we have Maria Todaro, a stage director and the artistic director and founding artistic director of the Phoenicia Festival of the Voice, comes on. A wonderful director. Also, we have a 15-year-old Nashville phenom, Ada Leanne, who has got songs on the charts and is really making a huge name in the singer-songwriter world. And finally, a classical tenor and virtuoso ukulele player, Justin Gonzalez, on Saturday evening. So check us out at jasontram.net for all of our upcoming shows and our past 95 episodes as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and remember, keep music alive.